Thank you for joining us, and welcome to DC Dialogues. DC Dialogues is our open forum where we discuss current events and issues we find compelling, and then we grab some really smart people and have a thoughtful discussion, fairly uncensored. So without further ado, here is your host, Bix Hirigoyen.
I would like to introduce my good friend, CEO and co-founder of EcoCart, Dane Baker. Dane, welcome in and tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us the 15-second overview of who is Dane.
Awesome, Bix. Super excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me on the show. I am Dane. I am we founder and CEO of EcoCard, and we got started just about 2 years ago or so. EcoCard is really a way for online shoppers to make their orders carbon neutral at the point of checkout. We have developed a technology that calculates and offsets the carbon footprint of different e-commerce orders and consumer activity at large.
Now, obviously, there's a lot going on in that description, but for the layman who may not be as familiar with the tech space, what is EcoCart's ultimate goal? On a very simple level, what is it that you guys do?
Yeah, so ultimately, we're really looking to make consumer activity eco-friendly. And today, consumers are becoming much more aware of the fact that there's a carbon footprint associated with their individual activity as a consumer, whether that's through e-commerce, whether that's in rideshare or gig economy or subscription box delivery. There's a ton of unavoidable carbon footprint that comes along with that. And EcoCard is really on a mission to make the fight against climate change easy, affordable, and accessible so that everyone can do their part.
I love it, man. And how do you, as you're getting into this space, and obviously EcoCart, the big goal is to kind of help save the environment here. Taking on global warming and climate change, those are big, daunting goals. What made you able to take that leap and say, you know what, this is an issue that I want to take on. I want to be a part of the solution.
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I've always kind of thought about, first and foremost, I've always kind of, had the entrepreneurial spirit. And all of the businesses that I've started or gotten involved with or tried to have always kind of had this common thread around being able to kind of leverage my own effort, my own work to make change in the world. And that really, that kind of comes in a few different ways, in a few different flavors. The last business that I started was an online peer-to-peer rental marketplace business. So think like Airbnb, but for surfboards, kayaks, snowboards, etc. Built a business really because we thought that renting, in contrast to consumption, was a greater benefit for the environment, especially high plastic items like kayaks and surfboards. Ultimately, as we scaled, it became incredibly complicated and expensive to maintain the sustainability rigor and ethos. And we tried many different things. We tried to hire consultants to kind of audit our business operations and our processes. We tried to buy offsets. Everything was very complicated, very expensive. And so realized there was a gap in the market. There was a need. And we sold the company to a larger rental marketplace business called rentis.com. And then I spent a little bit of time venture investing at the later stage. And then my co-founder and I came back together. We rejoined forces, and we started EcoCart. That's really kind of how we've always thought about our work is really leveraging our kind of efforts into creating impact, creating change in the world, and making the world a better place.
How do you, when you speak about getting to that place you need to be, how do you know? When does it click in your mind that, okay, well, we really got something going here and we can run with it?
Yeah. So it's a good question. It's different, across in many different, it's different for many people in a lot of different reasons. I think, for us at this stage in our company, we're relatively new, but we're kind of at this inflection point where we're seeing a lot of demand in the marketplace for our work and for our solution. And that's validating. And I think it's really exciting as well. We are kind of, we are going through a round of fundraising, and are excited about some of the responses that we're seeing. And I think that, there's kind of, to understand that you're really onto something, I guess it's very different. There's no like silver bullet answer, but once you start to see it work, it's really about just kind of like doubling, tripling down on it, and just really absorbing as much of that as you possibly can, because things, opportunities kind of come and go, and we think that we're at a perfect place right now to capitalize on this opportunity, because there's just, again, so much demand for something like this, and a lot of tailwinds in the marketplace that are working in our favor, that we're really excited about, and really excited about the mission that we're taking on and we're tackling.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear it, man. I'm certainly excited to see how EcoCart grows along the way. But I'm curious, you mentioned some of these inflection points, or they're almost barriers that you reach and you're like, okay, well, now we've made some progress. As someone that's working for himself, as a CEO in his early 20s, you're not accustomed to the usual, maybe you're getting promoted or that's how you're measuring success. What are those measurements for you? And how do you, when you lay your head down at night, think to yourself, okay, we made some good progress today?
It's a really interesting question. So it's an interesting one, because like when you're in the trenches of a startup, which we very much are, it feels like it constantly feels like no improvements are being made, no headway is being made. But if you kind of take a step back and look a few weeks back or a few months back, it's like, whoa, like a lot has happened. And so on like a micro day-to-day basis, it seems like, oh my God, nothing's being done. I'm failing. But in reality, like things are happening, and they're happening quickly. So there's a balance for sure. I think that I think right now, especially because everything's moving so quickly, it's a matter of just like taking a step back and thinking about where we've gotten to today, and what's contributing to that mostly, to really harness that and figure out what's going to be able to push this forward mostly into the future. It's really easy to get stuck on little things that don't contribute any value, and just kind of get distracted. And it's a matter of it's what's most important at this stage is to just kind of harness what's actually worked, double, triple down on that. So it's a complicated answer, I'd say, but what excites me about progress is, when we start to see things start to work a little bit here and there, and it's a really good feeling.
For anyone listening in, I think you should go check out Forbes article that Dane had written up about him and EcoCard and his company. Little shameless plug for you there, Dane, but want to make sure that everyone goes and checks that out, because I think it gives a good overview of you, your co-founder, and the company as a whole as well. So you talk a lot about transparency, which I think is incredibly important in this space. Mm-hmm. At the same time, you can be as transparent as you want, but if you can't communicate how the consumer is really helping, you're not going to get very far. So how do you go about communicating to those folks that are interacting with EcoCart, that are using the plugin now, how they're actually saving the environment?
It's a great question. It's kind of it's something we wrestle with all the time, right? It's how do you make something that's so intangible tangible? And there's a lot of ways that we aim to do it, and we have chosen project carbon offset. So for a little bit of background, how we're making orders carbon neutrals, we're effectively we're directing the donation or funds from the shopper directly towards certified carbon offset projects, like planting trees, building wind farms, sustainable agriculture, methane capture, things like this. And these projects, so that these carbon offsets come in the form of these projects, and it's all about the project selection. And so we work with, our broker partner, we work with our experts in the field to really help us choose these projects and choose the projects that are most marketable. And we focus really heavily on projects that we have we're able to see a lot of collateral on. So whether that's pictures or videos or data or stories or anything like this that makes this experience tangible for our community is what we focus on, as well as as well as from a kind of project selection perspective, really proud of the fact that all of our projects have a strong element of social good as well, whether that's protecting an endangered species of animal because we're protecting their habitat or their forest, or it's creating local jobs in a developing nation. All of our projects we select have that social good element, that marketability piece that's incredibly important and starts to make these projects a little bit more tangible to the consumer versus I'm building wind farms, or I'm aiding in methane capture and XYZ kind of method. It's adding a human element to the projects and communicating that to the consumer in the most marketable way.
All right, so now we've talked a lot about the fun side of this, and it's great being able to start your own business. There's a lot of great stuff that comes along with that. At the same time, I would imagine it's not always easy going through this process of starting from scratch. So what has it been like going through that process for you?
That's a really great question. Yeah, I mean, I think, it's been tough. It's been tough. Entrepreneurship in general is a really tough game. I mean, there's times where you feel like you're failing at any given point. I think you constantly feel like you're failing it. But there's things that kind of make it better and kind of show signs of life, so to speak. And so ultimately, we've been pretty fortunate to have had some really great market demand, which has been really strong. And so we've had although we've had product challenges, we've had team challenges. There's always been a really strong demand for this kind of solution out in the marketplace, and I've always had a lot of encouragement from other entrepreneurs and folks in the industry that have really helped to kind of push this along. And so, been really fortunate. But there's hard times all the time. I mean, when I'm sitting here in this chair working like 16 hours a day, basically every day, it starts to take a toll. But ultimately, it's all for the better. And the fact that I'm working towards a larger mission, larger than myself, is kind of what helps push things along a little bit.
So I think a part that people really overlook when it comes to being an entrepreneur and building a business is, yes, there's the product side of things, but then you've also got a team to build. So how have you gone about that process? I mean, that's a whole different ballgame in terms of managing personalities and expectations. And what has your experience been like building your team?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, we honestly, we've gotten incredibly lucky to have such an amazing team that's willing to work towards, something that it's way bigger than ourselves, towards a larger mission, even when, the compensation has just like not been there at all, being a resource constrained startup. And so ultimately, that we've just gotten incredibly fortunate and lucky to have been able to work with folks that are interested in our work and our mission and are wanting to kind of hop on board, so to speak, and to take a risk on a company that's quite early, but growing really quickly. And so that's a little bit about it's tough to build a team entirely and kind of scale out a team, but ultimately we've gotten incredibly lucky with some amazing folks.
Mm-hmm. When you're doing all that and you're going through your long days, what is the vision for where you want EcoCart to be in a couple months, say end of the summer, versus a year from now, versus in 5 years? What's that overarching goal that you want to reach?
Yeah. So, we think that we're quickly becoming what we think of as the new checkout standard in e-commerce. And that, comes along with a lot of opportunity to plug into as many different, direct-to-consumer companies, e-commerce brands that are selling physical goods online, and being able to plug in our API directly into their website, into their shopping experience for their customers. And so that's kind of how we see ourselves as kind of quickly becoming the new checkout standard. We're starting off with e-commerce, and ultimately we think there's a lot of opportunity outside of the e-commerce use case. To within gig economy or rideshare or subscription box companies, et cetera, to really power a holistic offsetting of consumer activity.
And with that, that's going to wrap up our time for today. But thank you, Dane, for joining us and being the first one on our podcast. We're really looking forward to reconnecting with you sometime in the future and seeing how EcoCart does. We're absolutely going to link out to ecocart.io once we get this video posted so that everyone can go and check it out and install the plugin. But again, Dane Baker, co-founder and CEO of EcoCart, thank you for being with us today. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, reach out to Decision Counsel and we'll be happy to get them answered. Can't wait to see you all next week.